if you in one sentence could say a summary of all of this, what would it be, Jamie? Don't be afraid. This is false. Fake news.
I would say, don't believe everything you see on Twitter.
Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, we are back with some breaking news. Can you believe it? We're here on a Wednesday. Jamie Lane, thanks for joining us last minute. How are we doing today?
It's been a busy day for me. How about you guys?
Not as busy as you.
I can imagine it's as busy as you. So, was it 2 nights ago? I shot the group a message and had some provocative data in it, but we got to run it by the data nerds.
Right.
So, Jamie Lane.
So it was actually funny. You sent that to me, and I was on my way to Dart Night. So I play in a Dart League on Monday nights, and you sent me that it was on LinkedIn, but it was essentially the same data that was shared in the viral tweet later on. And my first response was, "There's no way that data is true. Like either the data is true or the analysis is something's wrong. Like let me dig into our data." And I didn't have my computer with me. So in true data nerd form, I dove into a full analysis of our data on what was happening on RevPAR by market from my phone, and shared with you guys a few analysis of just high level of what we were seeing, and broadly, like, and it didn't necessarily align with the data.
Jamie, for the listeners and the people watching this video, can we share a screenshot of the media title and then a copy of the Twitter threads in order to give a kind of a visual before we jump in?
Sounds good.
All right, and then we'll have you describe. What's going on with this? Like Airbnb, this title. First off, Airbnb rental revenues have plunged in some parts of the U.S., but there is doubts surrounding the data, as we can see in this title. And for any of the viewers, here's the tweet that Jamie is talking about. It was, go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, so this was a tweet put out by, you see Nick here, essentially saying that there is a collapse in short-term rental revenue. And the statistic he used was revenue per available listing, which isn't a common industry metric that I think anyone uses. I know it's not one that we typically put out. We would use usually revenue per available night, or per available rental. So on any given night available, how much revenue was earned or nights available. And in that, he was showing quite a few popular markets, destination markets where revenues were down anywhere from 35 to 50%. And the period he calls out is on a trailing 3-month basis ending in May 2023 compared to May 2022.
Okay. And here's your response, which I loved, by the way. So get ready. A viral tweet about STR data, something that you thought maybe you never see in this capacity. But let's go over your data findings before we jump into the full discovery.
Yeah, so when I saw the tweet, it came in. One of our product managers sent it to me, and he was wondering what was up, and it was about maybe 2,000 or 200,000 views. By the time I got to responding to it, it was by over 5 million views as of today. It's got 22 million. So broad. It definitely went viral, and it went viral in a data point that we talk about every week. We look at on a daily basis. So what I wanted to show was in our data, AirDNA's data, what we were seeing, and how that compares to the data that was reported in Next Tweet. They quote it from all the rooms. I'd note that this data the analysis wasn't done by all the rooms. I reached out to them to see if they if this actually reflects their data. I doubt it does. But if it does, and I can't speak to that, but I think broadly we see weakness in the industry right now in terms of rates, in terms of occupancies. We're seeing certain markets down 10 to 20% on the low end, but we're not seeing any markets like down this much, down 50% revenue year over year.
It's something we've talked about on the show a lot, but this tweet had all the makings of virality. It had splashy big corporation plus demise plus, year over year having revenue in major markets where people have invested a lot.
Huge markets.
That's what caught my eye the most. But in reality, instead of 50%, 30%, 20%, we're really looking more at 10, 5, 4%, right?
Yeah. And like a great example is Sevierville, Tennessee, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge. Like there has been a lot of supply. Like last year or this year, supply was up 15%. If you look at supply relative to 2019, and we're up 80% in terms of listings on Airbnb and Vrbo. That is supply growth. But it's a market that's also seen really significant increases in revenue. They had really strong pricing power in 2021 and 2022. And now we're coming off of that and we're seeing declines in both occupancy and ADRs, but nowhere near cuts of 50% in terms of revenue. It's on average, we're seeing 10%. You look at professional operators, it's 15 to 20%. They maybe got a bit more of a boost with their revenue management strategies during 2021 and 2022, but it's definitely not the 47% drop that was reported.
Yeah, so it's a combination of previous years' prices going up because demand was at all-time high, an influx of supply added to the market, and now a bit it's not even a softening. There's still an increased demand year over year, but the supply is outpacing the demand increase, which drives lower occupancy, which then subsequently could also drive softer rates. Is that?
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing. That's what's playing out around the country. But what was weird is this list of markets wasn't even all ones where we're seeing really strong supply growth. Like there's markets here that are listed like Denver, Breckenridge, New Orleans, which have really restrictive regulation on new supply coming into that market. And like in Breckenridge, we saw 7% supply growth year over year. In Denver, it was 14%. In New Orleans, it was 7%. There's not a supply boom happening in a lot of these markets that were called out. And where we actually saw a RevPAR increase in Breckenridge year over year, not anywhere near a 37% decrease.
So how could data be misinterpreted that poorly? Like, what do you think the disconnect was?
I have no idea. I have zero visibility into the analysis done. Yeah, it's a mystery to me on how you could get data that declines that look like this. So I'd have to try really hard in our data to manipulate it in a way to drive this sort of narrative.
So all of the red flashing lights that this tweet set off need to just be quelled, right?
I would say so. Michael, well, you guys look at the data. You guys talk with lots of operators on a day-to-day basis. And what are you hearing from others?
Generally, things are softer now than they were last year and the year prior. So I think there's definitely a consensus across the board for virtually everybody that the market in general is not what it was 12, 24 months ago. I don't have too much exposure into people who just buy one house and that's their second home. And that's a large majority of Airbnb's listings, right?
Yep.
I would probably not have lobbied for anyone to buy a house last year to go into short-term rentals because you're buying houses at an all-time high, expecting returns that are on par with all-time highs. So, yeah, I do think there is something to that story, especially people that have bought in the past 24 months.
Mm-hmm.
You might not be getting that cap rate that you were hoping to get when you purchased it. But are you getting 50% rev par or rev pan or whatever their analysis is? That's a stretch.
Yeah.
Well, I just had dinner and drinks with Taylor Hill last night with Effortless Rentals Group here in Denver. And yes, like obviously supply and the amount of bookings and all this other stuff is a little bit lower. Like it's as expected. And Jamie, multiple times on this show, you have said, the 2021, the 2020, the 2019, even sometimes like expected revenue is not to be used as a kind of a North Star for what to expect in the future. Like, oh, everyone's like, oh, we had great 2021 and 2022, whatever the year that was really popping for revenue. And now they're going to be comparing that, for 2023. And, it's shown whether you are in a city or if you're in a mountain or beach area, obviously things are slow because of such a, I would say, outlier of a year of data that we've had and kind of like the trajectory that the industry has grown. I'm curious because you said RevPal is something that you guys don't really go off of in the sense of AirDNA data and like what you guys report on. So taking, Nick's report and yours, I'm looking at the picture here, how do you get these numbers and like what, like obviously I know how you guys do it. AirDNA has been known to be the most accurate for obviously all the data points that you guys collect, but for anyone listening or watching, kind of show me how you got to this number really quick for all the listeners, and I'll try to get this picture uploaded really quick for the video.
Yeah, so I went into our data set and downloaded all our raw data, so by market, and specifically taking, since Indix tweet, he called out the metro areas. So typically when someone subscribes to their DNA data, they get it by city, not by metro. So I went in and pulled the data by metro to align with what he had reported on. Taken monthly revenue for each of these metro areas, and specifically taking the aggregate total of monthly revenue for the past 3 months, ending in May, dividing that by the average number of listings available in each of those months. And that gives us our monthly revenue per available listing. And then did that exact same analysis for the 3 months ending in May 2022 as well. And that's so many opportunities to sort of get this analysis wrong. So if maybe they compared not the exact same time period, these markets are all highly seasonal. So if for some reason you're comparing high season versus a low season number, you could easily drop 50% revenue in high season versus low season, Breckenridge or Gatlinburg or any of these markets. And we report on listings. I think we have been very vocal about the listing growth. We talked about it last time. And last year we saw a 25% increase in listings, and that was happening. This past quarter, past 3 months ending in May, we're only seeing 15% increase in listings. And then just the other data point I'll call out that sort of collaborates this on a variable that an Airbnb puts out in their financials. In Q1, they called out 18% listing growth. All the while they had 20% increase in revenue. So as a business, they are not seeing listing growth go up faster than they're seeing revenue growth increasing. So on average, they're actually seeing revenue per available listing actually increase on a year-over-year basis, not decrease. And that is audited financials.
We'll see if that comes back at the end of this year. I would suspect probably not, but we'll find out. One of the interesting things on the thread that I'd love to get your thoughts on is this XY axis of Airbnb inventory and homes for sale in certain markets.
Yep.
And I don't think this is kind of a fallacy that cities often do of affordable housing is directly tied in with how many Airbnbs there are in that market. There is a correlation, but it's not the correlation. It's more causation or correlation. You're the expert. But it is interesting to see how these are basically X's. As Airbnb inventory in markets rise, available home prices decline, or available homes for sale. Now, I think you could look at any market and say available homes for sale are down pretty much everywhere.
Yep.
For a lot of reasons, but interest rates being the primary one. Mm-hmm. Is there any actual direct correlation between the two?
Yeah, I actually think available home for sale is the wrong metric broadly, especially for the markets that they called out. Because in most of these markets, like Sevierville, a Breckenridge, even a Scottsdale, they're really strong second home markets. So the inventory isn't available homes for sale. It is, what does the second home market look like?
It's available businesses.
What?
It's available businesses. Basically.
Available businesses that are primarily vacant today. And they show up in the census data as number of vacant homes because they're being used for seasonal purposes and not someone's primary home. Yeah. So if you look at the census data for vacant homes across the country, you're actually seeing that go down from 2020 to 2021 to 2022, all the while short-term rental inventory is going up. So what does that mean? One, there's more homes being moved from the second home inventory to primary home. And of the homes that people have that are second homes, a greater percent of those are being used as short-term rental, which is arguably a much better use of that real estate than sitting empty 50 months during the year.
That's fascinating. So more people are moving into their second homes than are selling them. Is that right?
Yep.
Wow.
And we saw that during the pandemic of
during the pandemic, but right now that's wild.
Right. And yeah, it's the other piece of it is housing inventory is down. And a lot of that's due to affordability or the falling home prices and people not wanting to sell into this environment of high interest rates. They think they're not going to be able to get what it was worth last year. They're willing to hold out until interest rates come back down and they could get a higher sales price. So where we are seeing in some cities is people, instead of selling, they're bringing their home into the rental inventory of, all right, I'm going to rent it out either as a short-term rental or long-term rental until I feel comfortable that I can sell and get the price that I think my home's worth.
Well, then going back to the original caption of the article, the Airbnb boom is over. Mm-hmm. That would kind of indicate that more supply will be moving off of the platform over the next 12, 24, 36 months than the opposite direction. Is that?
Yeah, there is always high churn of people coming in and out of the short-term rental market. So we see on average about 2% of listings per month come out of the Airbnb and Vrbo inventory. And that 2% has been really steady the past 7 years. Like, wow. Yes, it went up during the pandemic as more people got out, but then it came back in, and it's actually lower than it was pre-pandemic in terms of churn. So it's not like we're seeing a whole lot of people exit the market or have seen even excess churn over than what's typical. So are some people going to come out as the housing market maybe heats up a bit more and maybe prices start to increase? Yes. But on the opposite end, that's going to bring investors back in that want to invest in a short-term rental all the while at the same time, because they can start to buy decent investments again.
So and correct me if I'm misheard this or just didn't pay attention. This is all whole home data, right? This isn't shared spaces. This isn't, or is this every type of listing that can be listed on all the platforms?
This is everything.
Okay.
Uh, that said, the RevPAR trends do not look very different if you pull out entire homes versus shared rooms versus private rooms.
Okay.
It there's not enough growth right now happening in private room and shared rooms to meaningfully move the numbers. If all of a sudden we saw a really big increase in private rooms coming into these markets, maybe because of regulation or something like that, that could cause average rev pal to go down because you're having units come in that rent at a much lower rate, but that's not what's causing this.
Gotcha. So
Well,
go ahead, Michael.
I know this tweet has certainly caused some people to check their pants if they own in some of these markets, but I think what we're seeing is hold on. We knew there would be a bit of a downturn coming off from all-time highs, but you're not in as bad a shape as you might be led to believe.
Yeah.
And I think what's been most like interesting or at least fun for me is all the people reaching out saying like, this isn't what I'm seeing. How could this be true? Like, what does AirDNA show? And to be able to provide the data and like, at least in all the anecdotal views that I've seen of like, oh yeah, like I'm in Sevierville, I'm seeing it down 10%, or I'm in Breckenridge, I'm not seeing this at all. Like, where are they getting this data from? It's at least, and it's been validating for a lot of people out there of seeing the data that we put out and having that aligned with what they're seeing of like a lot of them are like, oh wow, I must be doing great if the market's down 40% and I'm crushing it. Like
Yeah, there's a response to my reply to your post. Someone saying, additionally, even if all my homes drop by 40% revenue, I still outperform a traditional 12-month lease. Bought 2 more last week, and occupancy is steady around 95%. Sadly, anything can go viral when you claim big numbers like this. So, I think that can be, taken with a grain of salt for some people, but I would agree. I think, there's a lot of there's a lot of data, there's a lot of media, there's a lot of attention around Airbnb, especially after IPO. And at the end of the day, it's all how you analyze the actual data points and how accurate there are. So I think you guys being able to step in that leadership position that you guys are with the amount of accurate data that AirDNA has just proves, obviously the data nerd that you are, that this is nothing to be actually scared about. So I would ask, if you in one sentence could say a summary of all of this, what would it be, Jamie? Don't be afraid. This is false. Fake news.
I would say don't believe everything you see on Twitter.
There we go. That's a good one. That's a good one. Well, thanks for jumping in last minute for this brief coverage. I know I enjoy it. I enjoy watching our WhatsApp and group chat go off with stuff like this. So this is where the podcasting and reporting part gets really fun for us here, at least on Good Morning Hospitality. But yeah, anything for you, Michael, Dad, before we wrap up?
No, enjoyed it.
This is fun.
Awesome.
Thanks for the fun questions.
Of course. All right, everybody, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe everything AirDNA for the most accurate data for your short-term rental markets, because like Jamie said, don't believe everything you see on Twitter. So we'll see you all again.
We didn't even pay for this ad, Will.
Hey, I'm just here. I'm here.
Get the bill.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you guys all again next week.